Welcome once more to the Bacteria Connection Seminar, friends. I'm very glad that you're here for this third presentation, and we are going to talk about the probiotic bacteria. Just remember that these seminars are just for general information, not to treat particular cases. Though in this particular one, we are going to go through a whole list of conditions and some of the probiotics that have already been listed to be of benefit for those conditions. And though they are not the only answer in these conditions, definitely they do have a very positive contribution for the recovery. Okay? So that's us from New Footsteps in Australia, and you can visit our website for more information, newfootsteps.com.au. We do have also a number of seminars. One of them is Children with Learning Difficulties, Nutrition and Exercise. And on our website, you can actually find one of the therapists that works with us. Her name is Jennifer Wright. She's a movement therapist and a sound therapist. And she has very good information there in the resource area for you to have a read. So you just click on the resource and you check for Jennifer Wright's resources there. And very interesting resources on movement and learning difficulties. Now, what are prebiotics? Prebiotics are non-digestible food ingredients that stimulate the growth or activity of bacteria in the digestive system. In other words, they are the food for the bacteria. So these are not probiotics, these are prebiotics. In other words, the elements that feed the bacteria, for instance, the non-soluble fibers, they feed on cellulose of the plants. They feed on some of the sugars of the foods that we actually eat. Each bacteria family will feed on a particular element of the food that we consume. All right? Now, I want to mention to you a number of them that seem to be of benefit and of tremendous trouble. Okay, how easy is to create an unbalanced gut? How many here have heard of the oligosaccharides? Oligosaccharides are actually formations of sugars, okay, that tied up together in long chains. Okay, there is a number of families of bacteria that love oligosaccharides. Okay, love them. In fact, when we ferment many of the foods, if they do like food fermentation for grains and legumes and fruits and some vegetables and so on, and milks, there is actually both oligosaccharides and disaccharides that are found as sources of food for those type of bacteria. So the bacteria will be eating those in the process of fermenting those products, enriching them with probiotics, with bacteria, and allowing them to actually last longer. They have actually consumed the oligosaccharides and the disaccharides. So oligosaccharides can be found in all grains, potatoes, sweet potatoes, yuca, batata, parsnip, turnip, legumes, and unripe fruit. Now, think about the last one, unripe fruit. When you get a green banana, does it taste sweet or starchy? Very starchy. That means that the complex sugars have not been broken down into simple sugars. That makes it sweet. Okay? What do you do if you have a green banana? What do you actually do to make it sweet? Do you just put a newspaper around it, right? And it will ripe. You just put the newspaper around it and the banana will ripe, and then you remove the newspaper and it will be all yellow and all those specks all around. Years ago, I used to work at an office in which there was a lady that if there was a few specks on the banana, she would just throw it in the bin. And I would just be passing by and I'll pick up the banana from the bin. Because that's the best way to actually eat the banana. when it is sweet. Because if it's not sweet, you are not actually eating simple sugars. You're actually eating complex sugars and starches or oligosaccharides. And we are surrounded by oligosaccharides. Think about it. All grains, potatoes, sweet potatoes, all grains, bread. You know, it's funny because I asked once to this gentleman, do you eat any gluten? And he goes, no, I don't eat any gluten. I said, so you won't have any problem if I remove the gluten from your diet? I said, no, no problem whatsoever. I don't. The last time that I ate gluten must have been, I don't know, 3 years ago. I said, wow, amazing. Normally it's difficult for people. I said, no, not for me. So 3 years ago, so was that a special occasion? So yeah, in fact, was that. It was, I ate the gluten and it was a special occasion. So what was the occasion? Somebody made gluten steaks. I said, all right. I started catching the vision. I said, what do you have for breakfast this morning? I said, I have Whippix. Whippix are, in Australia, are a biscuit full of wheat. I said, oh, and what do you have for lunch? Just a sandwich. You realized that you are consuming gluten. I said, no. Last time I consumed gluten was 3 years ago. He actually thought that gluten is only found in like a gluten steak or these vegetarian sausages, or all that stuff. Gluten is found in a lot of places. Now, is gluten in rice, yes or not? No. Rice doesn't have any gluten. However, wheat has oligosaccharides. And if oligosaccharides is the issue, does rice have oligosaccharides? Yes, it does. If oligosaccharides are the issue, then rice is going to be the issue. If oligosaccharides are the issue, then potato is going to be the issue. I guess all the Irish against me. I just put the entire country against me. I'm not saying potatoes are bad. I eat potatoes. But in some cases, if the person's diet is based on rice, bread, potato, soft drink, cake, what are we feeding? Only those type of bacteria that thrive on oligosaccharides. And if our diet is rice, bread, pasta, rice, cake, biscuit, is full of oligosaccharides. We're just feeding them continuously. It becomes an imbalance. They migrate up. They are craving for it. And literally, they crave for it. Fussy eaters in children, they normally have an over excess oligosaccharides. Why? Why would you give them a soup of vegetables if they're going to be fussy and they know how to make you go nuts? They will just give them something to appease them. They love pasta, don't they? Give them pasta. They love bread and pasta. Give them bread and pasta. What are you doing? You're perpetrating a continuous effect on their condition. And it's affecting behavior too. Okay? So, nothing wrong with all those. I eat all those. But they need to be eaten in a particular balanced. If we don't eat it in balanced, then we create an unbalanced. Now, think about this. These two that I've got on the screen here, oligosaccharides and disaccharides, okay? Think about the menu of the average individual, and if we're talking about an average individual, I'll have to say from a clinical point of view that the average individual has gastrointestinal issues, okay? So from the point of view that this is an average individual, and also from a clinical point of view that an average individual has gastrointestinal issues, think about this. How much of these individuals' diet is based on grains, potatoes, sweet potatoes, maybe not yuca, and maybe in some cases maybe not so much legumes, depending on the individual, lactose, sugar. If we are in Canada, maple syrup, agave, coconut sugar, rice sugar, malt syrup, and unripe fruit, or contaminated honey. Now, what does that mean? I've got a little mark on that. Unripe fruit. A kiwi has an enzyme in it that even though you harvest the kiwi from the vine and it's still hard, you leave it there in your fruit basket and it will ripen and it will go soft. And a pineapple, you can take it green, you leave it there and it will ripen. It will go sweet and it will ripen. Okay? So there is a banana, though it has green tips on it, you leave it in the counter and it will ripen. However, you get a stone fruit like a peach or nectarine, and if you pick that one green, you put it in the counter, you eat it a week later, you eat it and it still tastes, can't find the taste. It doesn't taste. Still green. And it goes from being green, tasting green, to going off. It doesn't ripen. Why? Because there is an enzyme for certain fruits like pears, apples, stone fruits. That enzyme appears in that fruit 2 weeks before harvest. If you harvest before that time, that enzyme is never present, that fruit is never going to ripen. So that fruit is never going to go down to a monosaccharide level of sweetness. And monosaccharides are very, very easy to digest. Disaccharides, however, is a two molecule. It's a bond of, for instance, in the case of lactose, will be glucose and galactose. Okay, and it's tied up together. Sucrose will be glucose and glucose tied up together. Okay, so in the case of fruit, unripe fruit, you might end up with 2 or more chains. Then we blame it to fructose. Have you heard of fructose intolerance? But the reality is that many are not actually consuming true fructose. They're actually consuming a bond of a longer chain. Okay? And why am I saying contaminated honey? I've got a friend that sells honey to a company. And I know he exaggerated when he said to me, I give them 1 kilo, they produce 2 out of my kilo. Now, how do you make that? How can you actually get 2 kilos out of 1 kilo? I know he was exaggerating, probably was exaggerating. He was upset, but he was probably exaggerating. How can you make more amount of honey if the provider that brought the honey for you gave you 1 kilo and you sell in 1.5 kilos? How can you sell 1.5 kilos? You just receive 1 kilo. How can you do that? You add liquid sugar, there's a lot of processed. So when you actually eat the honey, proper honey, you actually have 2 of those monosaccharides lingering together like that. You got the fructose and you got the glucose just lingering like that. But if to that picture you add the liquid sugar, for instance, now you have the sucrose tied up like that. So you think about this. The average individual is eating far too many grains, far too many potatoes, far too many, maybe not so many sweet potatoes, but we're eating a lot of grains and we're eating a lot of potatoes. That will actually, if you watch the weight connection, will explain to you why we need to lose weight. And those areas there need to be under control. So they need to be under control from the weight point of view, and they need to be under control from the bacteria point of view. Because the average individual will have the average day starting with the cereals in the morning, with the milk, that goes the lactose, with the unripe fruit, with a little bit of the maple syrup, moving on to the sandwich, and finishing with the pizza and chips. And are you following the picture? That is a totally unbalanced. Nowhere in history the human beings have eaten so unbalanced. When I hear people saying, but all through history the humanity has been consuming these items, yes, but in a total different ratio. In a total different ratio. They were not having maple syrup with cereals and milk in the morning. The milk that they were consuming in the majority of cases was actually yogurt. or liquefied yogurt or curdled milk. To start with, they're already introducing probiotics and very little or none of the lactose to start with. The breads that they were doing, they had leaven in it, so it was actually fermented, and the broken of the amount of oligosaccharides present was minimized because the bacteria was working against it. Can you see that? It's totally different. Honey was a red thing, and even if it was good honey, so you don't have the double bond, but you just have the simple bonds of fructose and glucose going around. Even if it was the good honey, it was just consumed in very special occasions. So nowhere in human history we've been eating like that. The items, yes, but not in the proportion that we're eating. To Christians, I ask this question: how many potatoes did Jesus eat? Anybody knows? Anybody wants to guess how many potatoes did Jesus eat? 0. 0. Why? Because potato comes from Peru. And until the Spaniards got to Peru and brought the potato to Europe in 1492, in fact, and from then on, there was no potato in Europe. How many tomatoes did Jesus eat? 0. There were not tomatoes in Europe until the Spaniards brought it from Peru. So we have to, when was the first pasta with tomato sauce made? It wasn't until the 17th century. The Italians ate pasta before, yes, but with pesto, not with tomato. Okay? And they didn't put tomato paste to the pizza base until the Spanish brought the... I'm just making publicity for an advertising for the Spanish, right? No, but I'm just bringing to you a point that the level of food and the amount of food of certain things were imbalanced. Why am I mentioning the tomatoes? Because, friends, you can be in the middle of winter and go to the shops and get a tomato. You can get a tomato all year round. And you can have a tomato in one shape or form in every day of the year. Through a tomato paste, through a tomato sauce for the pasta, through a tomato in the salad, etc., etc., etc. Nowhere in history that was possible. Nowhere. Okay? And remember that the tomato, potato, capsicum, and eggplant comes from which family? The nightshade family, which actually has 95 other plants, but we eat 4 of them that can be consumed by humans. Why we don't consume the others of the same family? Because their levels of alkaloids are so high that are extremely toxic to us. So we get the non-toxic varieties, which are actually just 5, because you have to include the goji berries there. It's also from the same family. And now we get a series of items that their relatives are extremely toxic, and we eat it 365 days a year. Nowhere in human history that has happened. Not even the Incas in Peru will consume the tomato the way we will be consuming the tomato today, for instance. Okay? We produce an unbalanced dinner table and dinner plate, and that will be manifested in the unbalance where? Here. Okay? So, the probiotics are non-pathogenic microorganisms that, when ingested, exert a positive influence on host health and physiology. The mechanism of actions are currently being studied in great detail. For instance, we know that probiotics deliver anti-inflammatory molecules to the intestine, enhance signaling in host cells to reduce inflammation, reduce allergy by switching immune responses, reduce the production of inflammatory substances. Friendly bacteria compete with pathogens to prevent their adhesion to the intestine. Probiotics compete for pathogens for pathogens, for nutrients. Probiotics have an antitoxin effect. Probiotic bacteria produce lactic acid that reduce the colonic pH to inhibit pathogenic bacteria. I need to mention that. How many of you have heard of the alkaline diet? Make yourself alkaline. Make yourself alkaline. I'm going to tell you one thing. If you have no proper balance in your bacteria, I don't care what you do with your alkalinity. It's not going to happen. What is the neutral of alkalinity? 7. Okay. Now tell me any part of the digestive tract that is above 7. In other words, alkaline. Which part is it? Which one? Yeah, well, the neutral is 7. So anything that is above 7, so 8 for instance, any part in the digestive system that is 8, in other words, alkaline. None. All throughout is different levels of acidity. 2 in the stomach, then 4 to 5.5 in the duodenum and further down, and it goes just 6 just towards the end. All the digestive system is actually acidic. All of it. Now, the milk with the lactose will be acid. However, the yogurt with the bacteria will actually cause a very friendly environment. And what it will do, what we ought to aim, is not so much for alkalinity or acidity, but rather for the natural balance of that area. What will you do if you work for a high pH in your stomach? You will be in a deep mess, because you need 2 acidity here to break down the protein and to get rid of any bacteria that is coming through the food, and you need a very acidic environment to do that. So what we need is a balanced environment. So the milk will actually create, a large amount of milk will actually create imbalance, but however the good probiotic yogurt will actually create a balance wherever that balance needs to be found in the pH that area needs. Are you following? Okay, so they promote tight junctions between the epithelial cells and forming a functional barrier, thus reducing intestinal hyperpermeability or leaky gut. That's what they do. Those fellows are helping us. They enhance the production of defensive molecules, mucins, peptides, and nucleotides. Intercellular and intercellular modulation of T cells, subtypes CD3, CD4. That's actually the CD4 is one of the ones that get reduced in AIDS. Okay, when the CD4s are actually reduced to a certain number, up to that point you were HIV positive. When they keep on dropping and they drop beyond a number, then you have AIDS. And they say, do not get near bacteria. So guess what these people don't take? Probiotics. Why not? Because it's bacteria. Hold on. It's a friendly one, and one of the things that helps with is with the CD4 cells. Modulation of TH1 and TH2 and reducing inflammation. In other words, probiotics are critical for overall health throughout the individual's life. Critically important at early in life and late in life. They make vitamins, help with digestion and absorption of nutrients. They regulate our immune system. A person that has very weakened friendly bacteria here, the immune system is low. Naturally, it has to happen because they are involved in the immune system regulation and oversensitivity of the immune system. So, you have abdominal pain, Lactobacillus rhinosus, GG. That is a good one. Good one to pay attention to. Normally, it's sold not just by itself, but with others. If you buy it by itself, if you buy it with others, make sure that this fella here, if you're trying to help your condition of abdominal pain, this fella here has bigger numbers in the product that you purchase. It's called the Lactobacillus rhinoceros GG. I say to people, just remember a rhinoceros. Just to remember, GG. Rhinoceros, okay, GG. We use this, and you'll see this one coming in a number of occasions, okay? You'll see this one coming in a number of places. For instance, if you have allergic rhinitis, you have Lactobacillus acidophilus NCFM and Bifidobacterium lactis BI04. Some of them are practitioners only, but they're actually based on studies that supplementing a particular type, a particular family, not like we said in previous presentations when we talked about kefir. Remember that we talked about kefir, and they have like 34 to 44, depending on the family of kefir, where it comes from, between 34 and 44 types of different bacteria. You're bringing inside a tremendous warfare, okay? Because the fellows that are established there are receiving lots of visitors at once. So there you go, the Lactobacillus rhinoceros is there, the GG. You will remember that one. There will probably be a couple that I want you to remember. Lactobacillus GG, that will probably be one. Okay? For instance, dysentery. This is another one that it'll probably be good to remember. We call it SB. S, capital S, capital B. SB, S. boulardii. S. boulardii. Okay? Now, this is not for a continuous supplementation of these fellas, but these fellas do play a role in the beginning for the establishment of all the probiotics in your system. Okay? I'll explain to you how it works. So, antibiotic use. So we have the Lactobacillus rhinoceros, but we want to take the Lactobacillus rhinoceros with SB or S. boulardii. Why? Let me tell you the story. This lady comes through the consult. She's been 3 years with diarrhea. 3 years, non-stop, every day with diarrhea. She's pale, lack of energy. You can tell that she is malnourished. And she sits down and she tells me that she's been for 3 years with diarrhea. And I found out that she has had a colonoscopy and she had an endoscopy, and nothing has been done and nothing has been changing, and she's been diarrhea a few times through the day. And I said, all right, there's many things that I would like to tell you, but what I'm going to do is, the place where I was working, they actually have a little chemist inside for the practitioners. So I went through the dispensary and I asked for a SB, and I asked for 60 capsules, 30 or 60 capsules, I think I asked. Because SB is just like a one-off thing, all right? So I went and I asked for an SB probiotic, and I walked inside and I said, all right, this one costs $25. I want you to take one of them for the first day, two in the second day, and you continue with two. And I told her how to take it. I want to take it to make it more effective. And she says, I just don't believe in supplements. I said, that's all right, not a problem. You're entitled to that. You just need to take this one home, though. And she goes, no, look, no, I just came for the consult just to see if there's anything. I said, yeah, for sure, there's something. There's many things that we can do, but before all that, we need to stop the diarrhea. Okay, so I want you to take this one and take it home and take it as I'm prescribing it to you. And she didn't want to take it, and I said, don't make me buy it for you. That always works. Nobody wants to be a beggar. So he said, all right, I'll buy it. I said, no worries. So she bought it, and I told her to come back in about a week and a bit, because she came in the middle of the week, and then she came about a week or 10 days later. A week and a bit. She opened the door. I knew, I was checking on the patient's list, and I knew that she was coming. I recognized her name. She opened the door. The color had changed. The demeanor had changed. She looked much more stride, more happy. She could actually conquer the world. And she opened the door and looked at me and said, and asked me this question: I don't know if this is appropriate, but can I give you a hug? And I said, oh, man, tell me about it. She sat down. She said, I just took it as you told me to take it. And you're looking at that little thing. And I'm thinking, come on, I've been with diarrhea for 3 years. 3 years. That little thing. She took it. On the next day, she took the doses there was an increased dose as I was telling her to take. So she took the doses as I told her. She says, by the third up, because I actually told her before she left the first time, I said, all right, in 3 days, this is going to stop. She looked at me like this. It's been 3 years like this. I said, all right, sorry, 4 days. She didn't believe me. She says, by the night of the third day, she noticed a change. It wasn't diarrhea. It was more like chocolate ice cream in McDonald's consistency. And improved. And she said, maybe something is happening. By the fourth day, it continued the chocolate ice cream consistency. And by the fifth day, it was a normal bowel movement after 3 years. It just happened to be a Friday. Then she continued with the Saturday, still doubtful. I mean, this is going to come back. You're so used to it. For 3 years, you think this is going to come back. This is like placebo, right? So the Saturday comes and continues going normal. Sunday comes, continues to go normal. Monday, she goes straight to see her doctor. And the first thing that she does, she puts that S. boulardii, boom, in front of the doctor and said, have you heard of this? And the doctor grabs it, S. boulardii, and said, yeah. There's a lot of good studies about this for antibiotic-induced diarrhea. So you heard of this? I said, yes. I had a colonoscopy, I had an endoscopy, I had so many things, corticosteroids because of the inflammation, I had the whole thing, nothing has stopped it, and you tell me you heard of it. And the doctor said, well, I never thought of using it. He said, it cost me only $25. And then from then, we work on her diet. There was many triggers that needed to be removed, and we worked further on that. But friends, with that lady, in 4 days, stopped something that was continuously bothering her for 3 years. Now, some people are going to see boulardii there and say, hold on a second, isn't that a yeast? Yes, it is a yeast. Are we not going next to that? And say, well, tell that person, tell me that when you've been suffering with diarrhea for 3 years, and I can offer you a solution with S. boulardii in 4 days. You tell me to see after 3 years of going everywhere, and the first thing that you do when you get to a place is making sure that you know where the toilets are, because you will need them soon. And when the entire social event of your life has been altered, because you cannot go anywhere, you cannot go on a long trip, you cannot go with your boyfriend, you cannot go with... You tell me that if you have a problem with S. boulardii when you've been suffering like that for 3 years, and this can actually give you a solution for $25 in 15 days, complete recovery from diarrhea. From diarrhea. Now, if it's Crohn's disease and things like that, there's many other things that need to be in place. Bear in mind of that. Okay? So yes, it is a yeast. That's why it's used for antibiotic use, because antibiotics do not attack yeast, only attack bacteria. Okay? So S. boulardii is that's for antibiotic use, and there's many there. Those are references. Okay? You cannot find this in Google. I just thought to share that with you. You can find it in Google Scholar. Google Scholar is when everything that you actually find there is reputable sources. Okay? So for anxiety, there's actually probiotic for anxiety. There is actually for eczema. There's actually probiotics for eczema. Look at this fella here. This is definitely gaining a very good attention. Lactobacillus rhinosus GG for eczema. Am I going to just use probiotic for eczema? No. Is there many other things that need to be taken in place in eczema? Yes, absolutely. because the toxicity here is now being too much for the liver and it gets expelled out through the skin. But we need to work on where's that toxicity coming from? Why is that? Why the food that I'm eating is generating that toxicity that then gets expelled out through the skin? Okay, so there's many food sensitivities for children with eczema and adults with eczema. But this is going to be part of a protocol. Rhinosis, for instance. So those are resources. Gastroenteritis. And the list goes on, and I've got studies for all of them. Okay? Recurrent UTIs, for instance. Bladder cancer, infections, chemotherapy-induced diarrhea. We have chronic fatigue syndrome. Is a probiotic going to fix everything? No. But do you think a person with chronic fatigue syndrome, in which some of the cofactors are zinc malabsorption, omega-3s malabsorption, iron malabsorption, vitamin B12 malabsorption, do you think probiotics in the area of absorption are going to have something to do with that? Absolutely. And more, and more, and more, and Crohn's disease. Now, Crohn's disease is an incurable disease. I'm starting by saying what it is there. Crohn's disease is an incurable disease. I have patients with Crohn's disease. I had those patients for quite a long time, some of them. Those patients that have been following a very, very strict protocol, and that include some probiotic supplementation. Initially, some S-Bulari, initially, but the S-Bulari you only take it once, and that's all, because it helps the establishment of the other bacteria that you're going to introduce. So the S-Bulari is like the fellow that helps the other bacteria hatch properly and reproduce properly. Okay, so you only need a little bottle. You don't have to continue to use it. So the people with Crohn's disease that we've been putting them in very detailed, very strict protocol, they have been without symptoms for quite a while. They do have Crohn's disease because Crohn's disease is incurable, but just don't have the symptoms. Did you get that? Okay. So they have Crohn's disease because Crohn's disease is incurable, but they're living very, very happily. They are not bleeding when they go to the toilet. They're not feeling bloated. They are not in corticosteroid medication. They are not in any drugged established protocol, and they don't feel bloated. There's no bleeding. They don't have malnourished. They don't suffer from malnourishment. They have Crohn's disease because Crohn's disease is incurable, but just don't have the symptoms. They don't have the symptoms. Well, why am I saying? I'm saying that they just don't have the symptoms. Okay, let's say that what would you call a person that is dead but doesn't have the symptoms? What would you call a person that is dead but doesn't have the symptoms? It's a living person, yes. Okay, so reflux. And the list goes on and on and on, including, for instance, AIDS or HIV and AIDS-associated diarrhea, Giardia, Helicobacter pylori. That fella is so famous, so famous. Oh, sauerkraut used to be working in the past. I wonder, have we changed so much that now sauerkraut doesn't work? No. But there's also some level of probiotics that work with that, okay, with Helicobacter pylori. And these are articles that prove that they work. An immune enhancement, colic for children. Do you know that sometimes we have to give probiotics to very, very little children and mix that probiotic in the milk? Because their star was not the proper star, or their star for whatever reason was not good enough. Okay? And we help them with that. IBS, definitely. IBS, definitely. Probiotics help. Sometimes with IBS, we need to remove the triggers, and there's a number of triggers. We mentioned about wheat, we mentioned about lactose, we mentioned about chocolate. There's a number of triggers for IBS, but all-round broad-spectrum probiotic supplementation also helps, okay, with IBS. And finishing the list, lactose intolerance, liver cirrhosis, prevention of dental cavities. 2. You know that I had a teenager once, the mother said to me, my son's breath stinks. And guess what it was? That was the way in which his body was showing a bacteria imbalanced. So all the burping and bad breath of these fellas here were coming up out of this young man's mouth. Okay? Prevention of diabetes during pregnancy. Small intestinal bacteria overgrowth is small intestinal damage. Traveler's diarrhea, prevention. So when you go traveling, you actually get exposed to different bacteria. The locals don't get diarrhea. They already have that bacteria balanced up. But when you go with your Anglo-Saxon bacteria to another place, the bacteria over there, they speak different language. They look different. They do. If you make a yogurt with the local yogurt bacteria in a particular area, it's going to taste different than the one in Bulgaria. Because the one in Bulgaria, the bacteria is called Bulgarius. Why? Because it's from Bulgaria. And it was and that's actually what gives that taste to the yogurt. Different bacteria will give different taste to the yogurt. Okay? The yogurt in India tastes different than the one in Bulgaria because the bacteria are around. So what actually happens when you go around and you travel around, you get exposed to different type of bacteria, and that type of bacteria gets inside your system, and there's a war here, there's casualties. Little people there die, and as they die, they release toxins, and those toxins then induce diarrhea. So, what type are we going to take on holidays when we go to certain countries? Just in case, what type of probiotic for prevention of diarrhea? S. boulardii. I'm just going to take 25 or 30 capsules of S. boulardii. It's only going to cost me $20, and it can save me a lot of headaches and enjoy my holidays. So if I start suffering from a little bit of diarrhea, I'll start taking S. boulardii and I can enjoy my holidays. Did you get that? Okay. Ulcerative colitis. Whoa, big one. Yeah, I've got some patients with ulcerative colitis. They just don't suffer the symptoms anymore, but they still have it because ulcerative colitis is an incurable disease. Urinary tract infection. Oh, there's actually something that is not a probiotic that is very, very good. And because you have come here, when we finish the recording, I actually want you to ask me what is good for urinary tract infections that is not a probiotic and is not an antibiotic to do the infections. Okay? For those at home that are watching this video, you can consult us through our website. newfootsteps.com.au. Okay? Candiditis, dysbiosis, gastroenteritis. All right. So normally, and I am on an empty stomach, so early in the morning with a glass of water, followed by a PM lunch with food, 6 hours apart. Normally, that's a standard protocol of probiotics. Normally. Okay? So you take one in the morning on an empty stomach and one with food or half an hour before food. Alternatively, 30 minutes before the breakfast and 30 minutes before the lunch. But you don't start with 2. You start always with 1. You want to make sure that you introduce them gently. If you take too many, there will be a bottle there, dead bodies, diarrhea. Right? You follow that? So you start with 1, you introduce, it's like introducing a dog to a new person. You know, you just go like that with a hand. So you have to just introduce. You get 1 first, and then the second or the third day, you start introducing a bit more. 1 half an hour before breakfast, 1 half an hour before lunch. That's normally, okay? However, this is not a prescription. This is a standard protocol that is there. We're listening to this very short and last presentation that is still to come. And I'm really giving you encouragement to listen and to finish this series with me, okay? Thank you for your attendance.